everyone. Welcome to Ask Jenks, our social media series featuring you, our Jenks citizens, submitting questions to ask anything that's happening going on with our city. Today, we have a very special guest, Teresa Nowlin, who is our Jenks City Attorney for the City of Jenks. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. So Teresa, let's do a little get to know you first before we dive into some of the questions that have come in from our community. So first, how long have you been with the City of Jenks?
I've been with the City of Jenks about 8.5 years.
Okay. Oh, okay. Wow. I've only been here 6 years. So I thought you and I started about the same time. You're like a big time veteran. Yeah. Okay.
Forever.
Yeah, forever. So you've been with the city for 8.5 years. How long have you been an attorney?
I've been an attorney for 19 years.
Okay. Were you always in municipal law?
I started out in general kind of commercial business litigation, and then I briefly worked for the federal court as a law clerk, and then I went into municipal law about 14 years ago, 15 years ago.
So a while. You have a pretty lengthy history in municipal law, which is very different from what I hear from you and from other people than any other kind of law possible. You do a lot of contracts, you do a lot of things that are kind of outside the scope sometimes of like what you did before in your law career, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I guess what keeps it interesting is there's municipal law, but as general counsel for the city, it means I do all the kinds of law. So we do contracts and HR and construction and all kinds. Something new every day.
Always a challenge, right? Yeah, I know. And that is kind of interesting about your job because you are brought into almost every discussion, like regardless of the department, because you're overseeing all these things. Like when we put a bid out for widening Elm Street, you are overlooking that contract, right? And things like that. So it's pretty interesting. But what we're talking about today is, and the reason we brought you in, so thank you, is that we are going to talk a little bit about our city council. And we're going to talk about how the City of Jenks government works. And the reason I wanted you to speak about this is because you have extensive experience with working with our council, working with our city manager, and then you are involved in every single department. So to me, it's like, who better would know about how our government works and how council plays a role in that. So thank you for being here. And are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready.
Okay. So we've had several questions come in about council and the government. I kind of just combined them into a couple questions because we had several. And so let's start with the first one. And the first one is, what kind of government is the City of Jenks? You know, Tulsa, we see their mayor is kind of out in front making these decisions, running staff, but City of Jenks is different than that. So can you kind of explain what kind of government we have here?
Sure. We have a statutory council manager form of government.
Okay.
So statutory means we are governed by the state statutes. We don't have a city charter like Tulsa and a lot of other cities do. Our form of government is set up by the Oklahoma statutes, and then council manager, because we have a city manager who is hired by our city council who acts as the CEO for the city. So the city manager is responsible for overseeing all the employees and personnel in the day-to-day operations, while our council is elected by the public and serves as more of a board of trustees and the legislature, and they simply hire the city manager as far as employees go.
Okay, so the council essentially is hiring someone, the city manager, to run things like our engineering department and our planning department, me, kind of that. And council is more taking that information from the city manager and what are they doing with that? When the city manager comes back to them and says, here's this whole report of things that are going on in the city. What do they do with that?
They determine the broader policy and direction of the city. They also set the budget for the city.
Okay.
They pass ordinances, so our local laws.
Okay. And so that starts with staff coming up with recommendations, or how does that kind of, because when we're at a council meeting, the question has come in before, these council members have already made decisions, like they've already come up with something. So, and our answer to all that is always, well, they have seen some of this information before. That's their job, is to review some of the things that staff is doing. So can you kind of talk quickly about the process of how a hypothetical situation is fine, of how that would work in a city council meeting. Let's say it's an ordinance.
So an ordinance, usually the department whose ordinance, the chapter affects them. I mean, if it's a criminal ordinance, the police department usually will work with me as city attorney and talk to me about revisions that we need or new ordinances that we need because state law has changed or something we realize isn't working or we're actually not, our day-to-day is not matching what is in the ordinances. And so we talk about what needs change. We work on it. Sometimes this is a course of months, even years, if it's something complicated. And then we will take that when we put together our recommendation. The city manager will take a look and we take that to council with a staff recommendation to approve it.
Okay.
So a lot of things get to the council that way. I mean, a construction project, our engineering staff will work on specs and bids and general plans, and then eventually it will get to city council to approve if it's a big project, and then also to approve the bids and the award of the contract.
Okay.
So a lot of things, most things come to city council through staff recommendation. Sometimes there are things that a city councilor or city councilors want and that are important to them and that they may more take the initiative to get it there as well. So, the councilors can have their own important things
like
that
projects and things like they could bring something to staff necessarily and then say, we're bringing this to council to look at and see if we want to approve it or whatever.
Correct.
Okay. So that's good to know. Cause I think sometimes the public isn't aware of that they can kind of have their own path to bring and still get reviewed, obviously, and still get staff input. But some questions that also came in, we just recently had an election, and we had some counselors that ran unopposed. So you'll have to correct me on the terminology, but to me, that means they automatically get that position because they're running unopposed. And then we had one position that had 2 opponents. And then after that election happens and the public has voted those people into council, the next step usually is, and I'll let you kind of go from there because we did have some questions about this and we've posted about it on Facebook. So I would love if you explain kind of the next steps after these council members get elected into their position.
So once they're elected, whether they ran opposed or unopposed, the very first thing they need to do is they get sworn into office. And so even though this time all of our council members stayed the same, we didn't have any new council members, they still have to take their oaths and get sworn in again.
Okay.
And then each time we have an election, it is time to elect the mayor and the vice mayor. We usually elect the mayor first. And when I say we elect, it's actually the city council itself votes amongst them who will be mayor. And really what the mayor's biggest responsibility is to be chairman of the city council and to run the city council meetings. And essentially that way they're in charge of the procedure of the city council. So it is important in that way. So they amongst themselves nominate who might be mayor, and then they vote amongst them as to mayor. And then they will elect the vice mayor.
Okay.
And the vice mayor's job is to step in for the mayor when the mayor's not available and to be the vice chair. And so they also nominate amongst themselves who could be vice mayor, and then they vote.
Okay. And so how long are these council members and mayor, vice mayor terms?
So their term as council member is generally 4 years.
Okay.
We did have a couple council members this last term that stepped in to fill the remaining term for their previous council member, but now they've been elected for a term of 4 years.
Okay.
Our mayor and vice mayor, though, we have elections every 2 years. So they really roll on and off on a staggered schedule. So the mayor and vice mayor serve a term of 2 years as mayor and vice mayor, but 4 years as a council member.
Okay.
So in 2 years, when there's another election,
Right.
we will re-elect mayor and vice mayor at that time.
Okay. And the reason they're every 2 years, but it's 4-year term limits. So some wards or some districts are in one election cycle, and then other wards / districts are in the other election cycle,
Yes,
correct?
correct.
Okay. So technically we have people there for 4 years, and then 2 years later, we might have new people come in from the other districts or whatever.
Correct.
Okay. And so we talked about how council members have term limits and how they're elected. So another question that came in is, we don't understand why the council members elect the mayor, vice mayor? Why isn't the public voting on that? And so now, from what I've seen, that's what a lot of council manager governments do. That's how it runs. Is that correct?
That's correct. So definitely all of these statutory council manager form of government cities do it this way, and probably a lot of other ones with charters as well do it this way. And, I think probably one of the primary reasons is that the mayor's primary role is as chair of the council. And so it makes sense that the council themselves would be electing their chair. Unlike a city with a strong mayor, where the mayor is also serving as the CEO and running the entire city, it makes sense that the entire public would then be electing the mayor in that situation. Where here they're electing council members as their representatives to handle the policy and direction of the city, who then hire a day-to-day manager.
Right. And that makes sense, because if we're electing a mayor, but they don't oversee staff and these day-to-day operations, that would be kind of a kind of a conflict of interest or something, where the public is voting on someone that comes in and runs city staff every day. So that makes sense that this is a council member. They're elected within the council members. Okay, Teresa, you've answered a lot of questions and I really appreciate it, but we're going to kind of wrap it up. But I think a great way to end this, for me included, is learning a little bit more and just kind of saying, put it next to each other, maybe the day-to-day operations of our mayor and like the day-to-day operations of our city manager, like comparing the two. So there's no confusion anymore of how our council, how our mayor works, how our city manager works. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So I guess one easy analogy that might help some people is if you think of the city as a corporation, which it is. It's a municipal corporation under law. And the mayor would be like the chairman of the board, and the city manager is like the CEO. And I guess in a more practical description, the mayor serves as I said, the chairperson of the council and runs the council meetings. He also serves as a dignitary of sorts. He's the chief ribbon cutter and handshaker. He's the one out front at ceremonial events and things like that. He's also the one who, for the most part, signs contracts that council approves, signs real estate transactions, that kind of thing.
Sure.
That's the mayor's job. The mayor is an elected volunteer citizen. So he's not at City Hall every day. He doesn't work there all day.
Doesn't have an office there.
Right.
Right.
He puts in many, many hours.
Right.
I don't by any means want to discount our mayor,
Right.
all of the mayors we've ever had work very hard and put in a lot of time, but they are not employees of the city.
Right.
And not full-time employed. While the city manager is an employee who is hired by the council to run the city manager's duties with respect to council, or essentially the city manager is their chief advisor on everything that comes through the city, as well as to report on the city's financial condition. That's required under statute. So the city manager prepares the budget that gets approved by council and has to provide financial reports. We provide them at every council meeting.
Right.
But that's one of their main jobs with respect to council. And then, as we know, the city manager hires the employees and the department heads, who also serve as subject matter experts to advise the council and oversees day-to-day operations and how things run.
Okay, that helps a lot, I think. And our city manager, and going back to what you said about our council members, we do need to reiterate they are volunteers and they put in a lot of hours. a lot of hours for this city that are on their own time, and they aren't getting paid. So they're amazing and we really appreciate them. So I want to reiterate that. But when we talk about our city manager, we're talking about you and I are going to him with things that are going on in the city, and then he is reporting those to the council and to the mayor. So we are going to actually have a link on this video to our city council page on our website. So if you are interested in seeing who your council member is, if you want just some more information, what district you're in, there are a couple pieces of information on that city council page that are very helpful. We are also always available to discuss these with our citizens. If you want to submit anything or call us or email us through our website, we're happy to answer. Also, our city council members have their information on the city council page. So if you do live in a certain district and want to get in touch with your city councilor, they encourage that. They really like to hear from their residents. They are representing you, and your voice is going to be heard through your city council member. So please feel free to reach out to them. Their emails are all listed on that page. I think we are going to wrap up now because you did amazing and gave us so much information, and we're super grateful for you being here. Thank you. Do you have anything else to add?
I think that's it.
Okay. Well, and thank you for what you do for our city as well. Like, you definitely never are acknowledged, I feel, in the public because you have a very behind the scenes job. So we really appreciate it because you do a lot for this city, and I think people don't know. So thank you very much. For our citizens, remember that we have our Ask Jenks widget on our homepage. You can click that and submit any question to us, and we will try to get that addressed or get back to you personally. And until next time, this is Ask Jenks.